concert last night. So that was fun. Yeah, I've been a fan since, I think, like 2001, since I was in 8th grade. So I was like, man, he's still doing that, rocking out. It's like, oh, I was there for that. So how many of us here have been around Christianity for like a long period of time? Like a long time. Me? I think I came out of the womb singing gospel songs. So it's just been ingrained in me. To the point that all the media that I watched, all of the music that I listened to was all Christian. And so there was no Jordan Explorer, there was no Diego or whatever he does, Clues. For me, the TV of choice was called Superbook. Anybody ever heard of it? It's from the 1980s. Seriously, Caitlin? Superbook, and I think we have a picture of it. I don't know if we do or not, if we got it up there. But Superbook was this cartoon that I watched with my mom, and it was this kid and a girl next door and his pet robot. I don't know how you have a pet robot, but he had one, all right? And so they would go back into Bible times because the Superbook was the Bible. Superbook. So they would go back in time and like experience the Bible in real life for them. And there was always this moral of the story at the end, and so I would have to learn my lesson after watching Superbook. So that was what I watched when I was a kid. Now that I'm an adult, when I read the Bible, I actually see the Bible stories in like Superbook land. So this is how ingrained in me it is. So when I was reading that I was going to be teaching in 1 Samuel today, I turned around to my coworker and I was like, oh, so I'm going to be teaching about that one time where like David's in the cave and then King Saul goes into the cave and like David could totally have killed him, but he just cuts off a piece of his robe and then like he lets him go and he's just like, you know, I could have killed you, but I didn't. And my coworker's like, I don't even know what story you're talking about. I'm like, no, I remember because it was in Superbook and I could totally see the cartoon where he's like cutting off a piece of his robe. And I was like, okay, never mind. Obviously, you didn't grow up in a household like me where it was like Jesus, Jesus all the time. That's okay. That's all right. So we'll recover. So anyways, today we're going to be talking in 1 Samuel, and it's going to be in chapter 24. So the story that we're going through is King Saul, who was anointed by God, and David, who was the same David and Goliath, king of Israel, later on in life. Is my mic going in and out? Yeah. I have no idea what's wrong with that. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we're in 1 Samuel chapter 24, and basically King Saul and David are playing this enormous epic game of cat and mouse, where King Saul is going after David because he's jealous of him and he can't stand him, and so David's running and going in and out of the desert, back and forth to these caves. So King Saul finds out that David has escaped into the desert, so he goes in there after him. So, and King Saul had like 3,000 men with him at the time. So King Saul decides to go into the cave to take a potty break, which I thought was really gross. And apparently, David and his men were in the potty break cave when that happened. So I can't imagine how like smelly and gross that was. But regardless, they're in the cave, he's taking a potty break, and at that moment, King David, or soon-to-be King David, has the opportunity to kill Saul, the guy who's trying to kill him, but he chooses not to. Instead, he cuts off a piece of his robe because he's that close to him in the potty cave. Don't know how that worked out. But he cuts off a piece of his robe, and when Saul gets up and leaves the cave, David comes out and he's like, bro, I cut off a piece of your robe, and, you know, I could have killed you, but I didn't because I respect you, and you're my king, and I have, you know, utmost respect for the authority that you have over me. Even though King Saul was the same guy who was trying to kill him. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can respect authority in spite of the fact that they may not deserve it or may not seem like they deserve it. So, we're going to talk about 3 things that has to do with. We're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 24, verse 10. I'm going to read it. It says, "This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on the Lord. I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed." So this is what David is saying to Saul when he's holding the piece of his robe and telling him, I could have killed you, but I didn't. So what we learn first and foremost is that David respected the position of authority that King Saul was in. He respected the position. So both Saul and David knew that David was going to be the next king of Israel. That wasn't a secret. That was part of the reason why Saul was chasing after him. So David was the future king, but he wasn't king yet. So what he did was he made sure that he asserted himself under his authority, knowing that God told me I'm going to be king one day, but I'm not there yet. So I don't have a right to overrule that authority that King Saul currently has. So he respected the position that he was in. Now, a lot of times, especially when you're young in your life, you've got tons of people that are in authority over you. You've got your mom, you've got your dad, you've got teachers, you've got bosses at work, you've got older siblings that boss you around. All these people have the right and the authority over you, and you have to remember to assert yourself under that authority, and a lot of times they don't deserve it. Some of our parents, they may not deserve our authority, or they may not deserve the authority they have over us, but we still have to respect them for it. We're also looking at verse 11. It says, "See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or of rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life." So he called King Saul on everything that King Saul was doing to him. But he also said, "Look, man, I have not done anything wrong to you. I am merely showing you that I had the upper hand in this situation, but I respect you enough not to do anything about it right now." So what David did was he respected the relationship. The first thing that he says in verse 11 is, "See my father." Now, King Saul was not necessarily his father, but what happened was that Jonathan was King Saul's son, and they were bros. They were BFFs. So I don't know about you guys and your best friends, but when I go to my best friend's house, it's like family. I get to go in the fridge, I get to take out whatever I want to, and a lot of times I end up doing like more chores at their house than I do at my own. I don't know how that works out. But it's family, and so you start to build a relationship with these people as if they're your own parents, as if they're your own siblings. And so David was not forgetting the fact that his best friend had a dad who was trying to kill him, but that was still his best friend's dad. That was still his father in the relationship. And regardless of the fact that King Saul went a little cray-cray and was trying to go after him and try to kill him, he still said, "My father, I have not disrespected you, and I have not chosen to come after you, and I have not chosen to kill you, even though that's exactly what you were trying to do to me." So David respected the relationship that he had built with them. Now, not the only relationship, but one of the relationships I have that kind of relates to that is my work relationships. Up until a couple of weeks ago, my boss was Terry Scalzetti, and he has recently moved to South Carolina to be a senior pastor, which is awesome. I think that's great, which means I can talk about him now without him, coming after me. So, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to talk about him. But the relationship that we had, we worked together for 3 years, and he was my boss, and I was his assistant, so he had authority over me. Now, a lot of times, because some stuff happens like that, where we're not always each other's favorite person, we get on each other's nerves, or I would think that what he did wasn't something that I would do, or he would think what I did wasn't something that he would do, and we would have disagreements about that, and that's okay, that's what happens in the workplace. But he was my boss, and I was his assistant. Now, not only that, but working together for 3 years, and aside from the fact that I had grown up knowing who he was, we had a relationship. He was like the big brother that I never had, because even though my brothers are big, they're still my younger brothers. So he was the big brother that I never had. And so the relationship that we had was based on the foundation that we had that brother-sister type relationship, but it was also based on the fact that he was my authority. He was my boss. And so the decisions that we made ultimately came down to the fact that his authority over me meant that I said, okay, I respect that you are allowed to make that decision. I may not respect the decision, and I may not respect the way he did the decision, but I respect that he has the authority to make that decision. So my respect was for the relationship that we had. And that's what David had with Saul, and that's what we have to have when it comes to all the different other relationships we have in our lives. With our teachers, with our bosses, with our older siblings, with our parents. We always have to respect the foundation of that relationship. The next thing we're going to look at is actually a verse in the New Testament. It's 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 5 through 7. And what it says is, "In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourself to your elders. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. So what this verse in the New Testament is saying is that you have to respect the process. It says here that in due time, God will lift you up. So you have to understand that the authority that we have placed in our lives may not always be there. King David knew that he was going to be King David, but he wasn't King David yet. So he had to respect the process. He had to understand that in God's timing, he was going to lift him up and make him king, but he wasn't there yet, for whatever reason. Sometimes it may feel like I should be in that position of authority. I have done everything that I needed to do. King David approached all the situations in the way that he needed to. He had his hands clean. He said, King Saul, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't rebellious against you. In fact, I respected you. But he wasn't trying to say, okay, God, I did the checklist and I did everything that you asked me to do. When is it my turn? He didn't do that. No, he had to respect the process because God's timing is better than our timing. And what's interesting is that we're looking at King Saul and David's story in chapter 24. King Saul didn't die, which would, be the opportunity for David to become king. He didn't die until chapter 31. So we're from 24 to 31, all this time and all this story in between that he had to submit himself to that authority. So we have to remember that it's not in our timing, it's totally in God's timing. Being under someone's authority, it also requires humility and it requires faith. You can't be under someone's authority and be proud about it. You can't be proud about who you're going to be or what you're going to do. A lot of times, I read different articles about the millennials, and I'm pretty sure that I'm a millennial, you guys are millennials, but a lot of times people say that, the millennials, they just want, what's coming to them. They want it instantly. They have that Starbucks, mentality where they're like, I want my life to be this, and I want it shaken up like this, and I want it like that now. And so what we have to do, knowing that those thoughts and those ideas about who we are as young people are against us, we have to remember that we can't approach things that way. We have to show people, especially you guys being the people that represent Christ, you have to show people that that's not how I'm going to approach my life. I'm going to let God do what he needs to do in his own timing and not my own, and not try to anticipate it before it's supposed to happen. So that means that there will be one day when you guys are the moms, and you guys are the dads, and you guys are the teachers, and you guys are the people in authority, you guys are the bosses, and you're going to have people under you. And you're going to want the same respect that David showed to King Saul in spite of the madness that he was trying to kill him. Now, hopefully, nobody in your life is out to get you and trying to kill you. So what I'm saying, you have to apply to the different lifestyles that you lead. If you have a part-time job after school and your boss is, just railing on you for whatever reason, and you have to submit yourself to that authority, then you have to remember that, I'm not sure why this mic is going in and out like that, but you have to remember that it's not in your timing, it's in God's timing. So the one thing I want to leave with you is to bide your time. Biding your time means that you're going to wait for the opportune moment. You're not going to try to get the upper hand in the situation, which is what David could have done in that cave. Saul was completely defensive. I don't know about you guys, but when you're in the bathroom, it's not like you can fight a war or try to defend yourself or anything. So, Saul was completely defenseless. His men were obviously not anywhere around because King David and his bros were in the back, we can take him. And a lot of David's people were telling him, dude, this is your opportunity. This is your moment. Bide your time. Not every moment and opportunity is your moment and your opportunity. So you have to stay in tune with your relationship with God to know when that time is. David had to submit himself and know that, okay, even though God made me a promise, it's not my time yet. So I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to bide my time. And obviously it worked out for him because he became one of the most talked about kings that we know about. I mean, you talk to anybody who really doesn't even have a concept of Christianity and they know that King David happened. King David existed. From the line of David came Jesus Christ. So it's kind of a big deal. But he waited his time. He bided his time and he waited for God's timing. And that's the one thing that we can do today. So that's what I want to leave you with. I'm going to pray. You guys are going to go to your small groups, okay? God, I thank you so much for this time. I thank you that we have the opportunity and the ability to look at what King Saul and King David had going on back in the day, Lord. I pray that you would help us to apply it to our lives, help us to learn from it. I pray that you would bless the small group discussions today, God. I know that this is our last Sunday together for a while, so I pray that you would just make it a time where the students and the leaders can connect, and the students can connect with each other. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey.